Al Capone, born January 17th, 1899, in Brooklyn, New York, was an American Prohibition-era gangster who dominated organized crime in Chicago from 1925 to 1931 and became perhaps the most famous gangster throughout the United States. In Capone's early life, he immigrated to the United States from Naples in 1893. Al, the fourth of 9 children, grew up in Brooklyn, New York. He attended school until the 6th grade, where he dropped out at age 14 after striking a teacher, all the while serving in the South Brooklyn Rippers and 40 Thieves Juniors, bands of delinquent children known for vandalism and petty crime that were common in New York at the time. Capone also became a member of the James Street Boys gang during this period, which was run by Johnny Toro, a gentleman gangster who had become his lifelong mentor and associated with the 5 Points gang. At age just 16, Capone became a member of the 5 Points gang and served aspiring mobster Francesco Iola, Toro's associate, more commonly known as Frankie Yale, as a bartender in Yale's brothel saloon, the Harvard Inn. Before Capone turned 21, he was involved in several violent incidents. A young hoodlum named Frank Galluccio slashed Capone with a knife or razor across his left cheek after Capone made a crude comment to Galluccio's sister, prompting the later nickname Scarface. Capone later shot the winner of a neighborhood craps game to death as he robbed him of his winnings. Despite being questioned by the police, Capone was let go because no one had witnessed the murder. In another incident, Capone brutally assaulted a low-level member of the rival White Hand gang and left him for dead. Since White Hand gang's leaders promised retribution, Yale sent Capone, his wife, and his young children to Chicago to work for Torrio. Torrio had moved from New York to Chicago in 1909 to help run the giant brothel business under Chicago crime boss Big Jim. Shortly after Capone's arrival in the city in 1919, Colosimo was assassinated by either Yale or Capone himself in 1920 to make way for Toro's rule. As Prohibition began, new bootlegging operations opened up and drew an immense wealth. In 1924, Capone was responsible for the murder of Joe Howard, in retribution for Howard's earlier assault on one of Capone's friends, William McSwiggan. An aggressive prosecutor attempted but failed to indict Capone, and the eyewitnesses to the killing feared harm, lost their nerve, and denied remembering the incident. Later that year, Torrio and Capone enlisted Jail and other associates to murder gang leader John O'Banion in his flower shop. O'Banion's associates Haim Wise and George Bugs Moran were unsuccessful in their attempt to kill Torrio in early 1925. After a stint in prison, Torrio retired to Italy, and Capone became crime czar of Chicago, running gambling, prostitution, and bootlegging rackets, expanding his territories by gunning down rivals and rival gangs. In 1926, Capone went into hiding for 3 months after he and some of his gunmen killed McSwiggan while attacking other rivals. That evening, McSwiggan had been out drinking with 2 other childhood friends who were also beer runners and other criminals when he was gunned down in the street. Again, Capone went unpunished. In May 16th, in Philadelphia in 1929, Capone and his bodyguard were arrested and charged with carrying concealed deadly weapons and sentenced to 1 year in prison. Capone was released early for his good behaviour. Capone's wealth in 1927 was estimated at close to $100 million. The most notorious of the bloodsheddings was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, in which 7 members of Bugs Moran's gang were machine-gunned in a garage on Chicago's North Side on February 14, 1929. Also in 1929, Capone was arrested outside a Philadelphia theatre for possessing a concealed handgun, and within days was sentenced to 1 year in prison. After death threats from fellow inmates at Holmesburg County Prison, he was transferred to Philadelphia's Eastern State Prison, where he was served some 8 months before being early released for good behaviour. Many Americans were fascinated by the larger-than-life image of Capone. Indeed, the motion picture Scarface, The Shame of a Nation, 1932, directed by Howard Hawks, starred Paul Mooney in the role of a gangster loosely based on Capone, who repeatedly obtained a copy of the film for private screenings. On June 5, 1931, Capone was indicted for 22 counts of federal income tax evasion for the years through 1925 through 1929. On June 12th, Capone and others were charged with conspiracy to violate prohibition laws for the years 1922 to 1931. In October, Capone was tried, found guilty on 3 of the 23 counts, and was sentenced to 11 years in prison and $50,000 in fines. He entered Atlanta Penitentiary in May 1932, but was transferred to the New Alcatraz prison in 1934. In November 1939, suffering from syphilis, he was released and entered the Baltimore prison. Later, he was retired to his Florida estate, where he died from cardiac arrest in 1947. as a powerless recluse.